Australians all over the country are just shocked, saddened and devastated about what has happened in a suburban street up in suburban Queensland.
I can confirm that Hannah Clarke, 31 years of age, of Camp Hill, and her children, Aaliyah Baxter, Laianah and Trey Baxter, all perished.
Welcome or welcome back, and thanks for being here. I'm Cassie, and this is A Wicked World. If you haven't checked out A Wicked World on Patreon yet, and you want to have access to over 60 exclusive videos with new ones being added each month, then make sure you do that using the link in the description box below. Now, the story I have for you today is about a mother and her 3 children who met a horrific end after months of struggling to get out of a toxic situation. This is the story of Hannah, Aaliyah, Laianah, and Trey. Hannah Clarke was born on September 8, 1988, in Brisbane, Australia. She was known to be very athletic, and after graduating high school, she worked as a trampoline class instructor. Hannah was described as being passionate, resilient, and strong. She was also said to be fun-loving, happy, and bubbly, and she easily made friends. Hannah loved participating in different physical activities, especially CrossFit. When she was only 19 years old, she would meet New Zealand-born Rowan Baxter, who was 11 years older than her. His son was actually in a class that Hannah was teaching at the time. Now, Rowan was a former rugby player who trialed with the New Zealand Warriors, and while he was paid $10,000 a year, he never actually played in a game. He was also known to be very competitive, confrontational, and controlling. He did not like to be told no and would lie when needed to get his way. He also had a short temper and liked to portray himself as being the victim, no matter what the situation. Rowan had told Hannah at the time that they met that he was still living with his ex for their son's sake. However, that wasn't the case. He was actually still with her and cheating on her with Hannah. Though about 4 months into their relationship, Rowan would finally end things with his son's mother. After they'd been dating for about 6 months, Hannah found out that she was pregnant, and she was very excited for this big step in her life. But Rowan told her that she was too young, and they weren't ready for that yet, so she ended up terminating it. Not long after, the couple moved into a townhouse together, and Rowan proposed to Hannah in 2011. They would then get married the following year. Hannah and Rowan would go on to have 3 children together too, and after the birth of their first daughter, Rowan would stop paying child support for his son. Their first child was born on April 10, 2013, and she was named Aaliyah Baxter. Aaliyah was said to be a sweet, clever, articulate little girl who did well in school, and she loved reading. 2 years later, on March 19, 2015, Laianah was born. And she was described as a happy little girl who always loved making people feel better when they were sad. She also loved to be the center of attention and liked to make people laugh. Then on December 4th, 2016, Trey was born. He was described as being a loving mommy's boy who was high energy and he loved playing sports. Shortly before the birth of their second daughter in January of 2015, Hannah and Rowan opened up their own gym, which they called Integrate Gym.
I'm Rowan.
And I'm Hannah. And whether you're just getting started...
This business venture was something that Hannah's parents had invested $18,000 into. However, it would end up failing. The couple then went on to open up a second gym, but this closed down by 2019. And at that time, they were said to have still owed $75,000 for the business. Now, while Hannah had always been trying to learn the best ways to run the gym successfully, Rowan had seriously mishandled their money, which led to it closing. Not only that, but after the couple's youngest son, Trey, was born, Hannah continued to work at the gym 5 days a week. Rowan, on the other hand, only worked 3 days a week, and for the remainder of the week, he did nothing. Yet he would end up telling his wife that she was the one who needed to get a second job. Rowan's behavior towards Hannah had quickly turned very controlling. At the beginning of their relationship, Hannah had gone on a cruise without him, one that she had planned with friends months before they even met. But she had been hesitant to go because Rowan didn't want her to. And when she did anyways, he would obsessively call and text her the entire time. It wasn't long until Rowan began controlling other things about Hannah too. Like she wasn't allowed to wear the color pink, or shorts, or short skirts either. Sometimes he would even tell his very physically fit wife that she was a fat pig, and that having sex with her was like having sex with a bucket. Rowan and Hannah also shared a Facebook account because he didn't trust her and always wanted to keep tabs on her. Soon, Rowan started telling Hannah who she could and could not hang out with, and he began trying to isolate her from her family. He would limit the amount of time that she and the kids could go see her mother and father. And whenever Rowan was upset with Hannah, he would not allow her and the children to go to different planned social events and family gatherings. In fact, he would even tell Hannah's parents that she and the kids couldn't come because, quote, Hannah misbehaved. Rowan's controlling behavior of his wife was something that many people were noticing. They also sensed just how insecure he really was, but knew that Rowan always tried to hide it the best he could with his macho attitude. Hannah's mother, Sue, was just one person who had never really liked Rowan. Right from the start of her daughter's relationship with him, she thought that he was extremely smug and cocky. The big age difference between the two had also made her feel rather uncomfortable. However, Sue had pushed through these feelings and gave Rowan another chance, even asking him to help her at the gym. But during one of these sessions, Rowan dropped his mother-in-law on the mat, causing her to split her face open. And instead of helping her or making sure she was okay, he just laughed at Sue and told her to harden up. It was clear that he lacked empathy for everyone. Members at Hannah and Rowan's gym didn't have very nice things to say about him either. According to them, he was always moody and his fuse grew shorter and shorter as time went on. He would mutter to himself, yell at members during workouts, and once told another member that she did not want to get inside his head because it was a very messy place. Somehow, Rowan did have friends though, and whenever he was with one of these friends, telling them about the controlling things that he did to Hannah and they called him out on his bad behavior, he would turn things around and make it seem like he was the victim in the situation. Rowan expected a lot out of his wife too. She was expected to run the business, work a second job, raise the children, keep the home immaculate, and sleep with him every night. If she ever said no to this intimacy with Rowan, a huge fight would always follow. Which is exactly what happened on May 18th, 2019. After Hannah turned her husband down for sex and an argument ensued, Rowan smashed her watch and left the home. Not long after, Hannah noticed that the garden hose was missing from their yard, and she feared that Rowan had taken it to shove in the car exhaust. So she called up her parents and told them just how fearful she was. They then drove around with her for hours looking for him. While they wouldn't end up finding Rowan, he would return home later that night, and he would tell Hannah that he had tried to off himself. And honestly, it's unfortunate that he didn't. Towards the end of 2019, Hannah qualified to compete in a CrossFit competition, and she invited Rowan along with 2 other members of the gym to be on her team. However, shortly after this, Rowan had to pull out of the competition due to an injury, and he expected his wife to do the exact same, even though she was the one who had qualified to be there in the first place, not him. Hannah refused to do what Rowan wanted this time, and it absolutely infuriated him. So on the morning of November 8th, 2019, she went home after a workout to find that her husband and her 3 children were nowhere to be seen. When she tried to call his phone, she realized it had been turned off, so she had no way of finding out where they were. Hannah called up her mother in a complete panic and told her that she believed Rowan was punishing her for taking part in the competition without him. Later that day, her belief was confirmed because Rowan texted her and said that he could not believe that she was going to compete without him. But he still wouldn't tell her where he was, and didn't bring the kids back. Hours later, once it was starting to get dark out, Rowan finally returned home with the children. Come to find out, he had secretly been recording Hannah while he was gone too, also he could see what her reaction was. And also to use the things that Hannah had said in her state of panic against her later on. But according to Rowan, him recording his wife was merely an accident. He had no idea that his old cell phone that he had left out had been recording the entire time. At this point, Hannah had had enough, and she reached out to a family violence center, telling them that she wanted to leave her husband. But she knew that in the meantime, she had to keep acting like everything was okay between them. That's until she had the chance to make a safe escape with her children. Now, while Hannah was still living with Rowan, one night while she was sleeping, he took her phone and went through it. And he found that she had been texting another man, but it was someone who was on Hannah's CrossFit team. Regardless, he accused her of having an affair and began yelling and screaming. Rowan then tripped Hannah to the floor, pinned her down by the neck, and said that she had no idea what he was capable of. By that point, Hannah was extremely fearful of her husband, and she told a friend that when he killed her, to make sure that someone who loved the children would take care of them. On December 5th, Hannah packed up a few things from her and Rowan's shared home, only the essentials, so that she could make a quick exit with the children, and she left. From there, she went to her parents' home. She also went down to the local police station to see what she could do about Rowan. An officer suggested that she take out a protection order against him. However, Hannah was worried how he would react to this, so she didn't. Even after she left him, Hannah continued to let Rowan see the children. But he soon began telling her that she was hurting them by ending their relationship. Eventually, Rowan would convince Hannah to sit down with him over dinner to talk. But once their meal was over, Rowan went back to Hannah's parents' house and began crying to them, once again acting like he was the victim. A few days after this, Hannah went back home with the kids to have dinner with Rowan once again. However, hours later, she called up her mother, asking her to come over and help her. Apparently, Rowan had put the kids to bed in his bedroom and was refusing to let them leave. But according to him, Hannah was the one being crazy because he just wanted to spend one night with his kids. After fighting with Rowan for some time, Hannah finally agreed to leave the 3 children with him. And much to her relief, he would end up returning them the very next morning. When he did return them back, Rowan would tell Hannah that he was going to a doctor for a mental health assessment and he was trying to get help. So he couldn't understand why it was that she wouldn't come back home to him. But Hannah stood her ground. She was not going back to that toxic relationship. She would, however, let Rowan take the children occasionally, sometimes overnight as well. But as time went on, he became more difficult to deal with and began bringing the children back to her later and later each time. It wasn't long until the couple's oldest daughter, Aaliyah, who was just 6 years old, began to realize that the way her father was treating her mother was not right. One time, the little girl even told her father to never come back to their home after she witnessed him screaming at Hannah. When Hannah would sometimes FaceTime Rowan so that the children could see their father, Aaliyah would refuse to talk to him and instead just walk away. She wasn't the only child that Rowan's behavior was affecting either, because Laianah had once confided in a family friend saying that she had nightmares about Daddy killing Mommy. On Christmas Day, Rowan begged to spend time with the children, so Hannah's parents agreed and let him spend the day there. Strangely, the father gave the kids gift cards as presents, but when they went to use them, they would find out that there was no money on them. The next day, December 26th, Rowan asked Hannah if he could bring the kids to a nearby park so that they could use the skateboards they had gotten for Christmas. She agreed, and they all went together. Once they were done playing, Rowan wanted to bring the children home, but Hannah told him no. Rowan, of course, did not like that answer, and he grabbed Laianah and threw her in the car. She had no seatbelt on and wasn't in a car seat, but he began to drive away and yelled back at Hannah, "You caused all of this. It's all your fault." Luckily, the mother was able to flag down a police officer and tell them what had happened. But since there was no legal custody agreement in place, the officer told Hannah there wasn't much they could do. However, after the mother explained everything that had happened with Rowan, the officer attempted to call him to see if she could get a hold of him. But of course, he wasn't answering his phone, and when they went to his home, he wasn't there either.
He took the middle one and just took off with her in my car. And now he's trying to play games with me on the phone.
I know it's frustrating. I know.
I don't object to him actually seeing the kids. He does this and he's fine for 1 minute and then the next minute.
The next day, Rowan would FaceTime Hannah and show her that Laianah was fine. But also during that conversation, he went off about a man that he believed his wife was having an affair with. He then told her that he would not bring their daughter back unless she ended this relationship. By December 28th, Hannah had applied for a protection order against Rowan. The next day, the father finally returned Laianah back to Hannah. It was at that time that he was served with the protection order that stated he was not to go within 100 meters of Hannah or the children. Rowan was visibly upset by the news, and he began hysterically crying, saying that he had done nothing wrong. He claimed that his daughter wanted to be with him, and then he refused to put her down. Luckily, officers were eventually able to take her from him and give the little girl back to Hannah. After this, on January 3rd, 2020, a parenting plan was put into place by the courts. It ordered that the children live with their mother full-time, and they would get to see Rowan every second weekend of the month and every other Thursday and Friday. This exchange was to take place at Hannah's parents' home, and Rowan was also required to pay $360 a month in child support. There were also other stipulations put into place, and Rowan was not to have any contact with Hannah outside of FaceTime calls and exchanges. And he was not to harm Hannah or expose the children to any DV. But even after this, Rowan refused to follow the court's order. He kept dropping the kids off later than he was supposed to, and showing up at Hannah's parents' home on days that he was not allowed to be there. Soon, the 3 children began crying anytime they knew they had to go see their father. One time, when Rowan and Hannah were exchanging the 3 children, she saw that he had placed some explicit photos of her on his car, so she grabbed them. But as she was walking away, Rowan grabbed her by the wrist and ended up spraining it. He also busted her lip in the process. Police would be called following this incident, but according to Rowan, he had done nothing wrong. She was the one who was taking his property. Around the same time, Rowan would lose his job as a personal trainer. This was because Hannah and her friends had memberships at the gym where he worked, and given the situation, they did not want to be around him. So they had told the owner of the gym what had happened between Rowan and Hannah and threatened to cancel their memberships if he was not fired. This meant that Rowan no longer had any income. And it wasn't long until he also lost his home. He told friends that he was losing everything. Then on the morning of February 19th, 2020, Hannah, along with the children, went out to the car, and she put them inside to go drop them off at school. But as she walked around the vehicle to get in the driver's seat, Rowan jumped into the passenger side of the car. He told her to drive, and he had a gas can in one of his hands. Hannah was terrified, and she began driving. She didn't know what else to do. She spotted a neighbor named Michael who was outside watering his garden, so she pulled the car over and began screaming for him to call the police. She also said, "He's trying to kill me. He's poured petrol on me." Hannah was attempting to get out of the car, but Rowan would not let her. Then suddenly, the vehicle burst into flames. Rowan had dropped a lighter on both of them as soon as Hannah had begun screaming for help. But somehow, Hannah, who was on fire, was able to get out of the car, and Michael went running over to her. He began hosing her down. Her entire body was engulfed in flames. The car was also so engulfed in flames that Michael would say he had no idea that there were 3 children in the back seat. An off-duty paramedic was also driving by at the time, and she would stop to help put out the fire. Hannah then said to her, "My babies are in the car. Why didn't I just stay in there with them?" Now that Michael realized there were kids also inside the vehicle, he began trying to get them out. But unfortunately, there was nothing that could be done for Aaliyah, Laianah, and Trey. Rowan was still alive at this point, though, and he had rolled out of the car onto the ground. But one bystander then saw him lunge into the passenger seat and grab something. At first, they didn't know what it was, but it was later discovered to be a knife. Rowan took the blade and stabbed himself in the stomach with it. Then he fell to the ground. When police arrived on the scene, Hannah was horrifically burnt, but still alive. However, she had suffered burns to over 97% of her body, and she would end up passing away hours later at 5:40 p.m. Before she died, Hannah was able to tell medical staff that Rowan was the one who had set her on fire, and she hoped that he would survive and spend the rest of his life rotting in jail. Unfortunately, that wouldn't happen though, because the knife injury that Rowan had inflicted to his stomach would end up claiming his life too. When police began to investigate what had happened, they found video surveillance of Rowan going to a gas station the day before and filling up a gas can. They also found that he had purchased some zip ties, cleaning products, and 3 chocolate Kinder Eggs. Then there was a letter discovered inside Rowan's phone, which he had written shortly before he killed his entire family. It said, "Hannah, I'm finishing your game. I don't want to play anymore. This was never my intention. You can't F with somebody's life like this and expect them to just take it. I can tell you no more, Hannah, no more. Do you know how hard it is to go to bed every night without your children? I wish you had just tried. I have told the kids that you loved them. And they will miss you, I'm sure. You destroyed my life and I cannot move on. I hope all of this was worth it for you and your family. Now that you have no one to apparently control it, your life, you're a strong girl. You will be fine." This note had been created on January 27th and last modified on February 6th, 13 days before the fatal fire. Given this evidence, authorities believed that Rowan had intended on kidnapping Hannah, reading her this note, then killing her. From there, he would give the 3 children the chocolate he had bought from them, and they would go on to live a happy life together. But when Hannah had suddenly pulled the car over and involved an innocent bystander, Rowan made the snap decision to kill all of them. After Hannah, Aaliyah, Laianah, and Trey's deaths, an inquest was held to see if more could have been done to prevent it. But in the end, it was determined that it was unlikely that any further action taken by police officers, service providers, family, or friends could have stopped Rowan from doing what he did. On March 9, 2020, a joint funeral was held for Hannah, Aaliyah, Laianah, and Trey. During this time, Hannah's younger brother Nat spoke, and he said, "We weren't brother and sister, we were friends. You're so amazing, Han, it's no wonder your kids were just the same." He continued, "Aaliyah, you were everything a big sister should be. Brave, strong, and quite bossy. Laianah, you were the rat bag, the little middle child. There was so much of Hannah in you. You were beautiful, sweet, and caring, with an amazing imagination. You were the sweetest kid and a beautiful mermaid. Trey was his mother's little man and her best surprise." Hannah's family also established the foundation called Small Steps for Hannah in honor of the family, and the charity's goal is to put a halt to the incidences and severity of family violence and DV in Australia. Thank you to all the patrons of A Wicked World. Now, there's even more of A Wicked World on Patreon, so check it out on patreon.com/awickedworld, or use the Patreon app. You'll have access to exclusive videos each month and more. Any support truly helps to make sure the victims are never forgotten, and to highlight the shortcomings of society associated with each case. Do you have a suggestion for a story you'd like to see me cover? If so, send me an email to awickedworldtruecrime@gmail.com.